Hello internet friends, Navyet here. One of the most fun things about having a toy-based YouTube channel is the opportunity to create compelling images with those toys, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do in this video by taking this still image from Transformers the movie, removing the 3 Dinobots and putting in the Studio Series 86 toys. This is all in an effort to create a thumbnail people might like to click on. If you're a small YouTuber like me, it's very hard to stand out from the pack, and lavishing a bit more care and attention on your thumbnails is one way we can do that. So if you are in that position, you're a small YouTuber, this video will be relevant to you. It will involve Photoshop. I'll show you some tips and tricks I've picked up over the years, some toy photography as well, how to capture the right image and light it properly. In fact, that is the first hurdle we need to surmount here. How are we going to reproduce this pose, Grimlock gliding down to the ground with this toy, because we need to suspend him somehow, and how to get that right. So let's jump straight in with that question, figure out how we're going to reproduce this pose. Just before we go into looking at Grimlock, I did want to show you the light that I've been using. The amount of light that you need to take a decent picture of something is a lot more than you realize, and I wasn't able to get decent images until I got hold of this particular light. It's an LED light, and I'll just show you how bright it is when it's switched on. Now, I've never done this before. I've never pointed the camera directly at the light. I'll put it as bright as it will go. It's extremely bright light, and you can see there's yellow and white in there. And it really allows you to light things, not just objects, but yourself as well. When I'm doing my to-camera stuff, this light makes me look like I'm not sitting in a dark, dingy dungeon. It's very cool. It's a little bit expensive. I think it's about 100 and something pounds, but it was the thing that I think was the most important purchase in terms of filming anything for YouTube. So you can see that there are these dials here, and they are both on full at the minute, but you have yellow and white. Now, I've found that if you're filming, say, toys, you want to take out the yellow, because that will modify the color of the actual toy when you point it. Let's see if we can demonstrate this. It's better to show rather than tell. So there is Sludge in that white light, and you get a pretty close representation of the color of the red and so on. But if I turn on the yellow, you'll hopefully see that he's slightly discolored. It might not be clear. You see there's an automatic filter on most smartphones now that will adjust for it, but sometimes you still get that yellow bleeding through. So mostly we're going for the white light, so I'll take out the yellow now. Goodbye yellow, and full white light on the figure. Is actually the opposite. Well, not the opposite. If you're filming a human face, if it's just white, then actually you look like a ghost. You look skeletal, or as if you're ill in some way. So yeah, actually, if you're filming a face, you do put a little bit of yellow in, a little bit of warmth to the skin, and it really helps. But for toy photography, I've found that like the white light is what you want. Okay, so looking at the reference image for Grimlock, we can see that his arms are actually up here, so they're kind of bent up in that direction diagonally, but we can do that in Photoshop. We can change that. The articulation of these modern figures is actually really good, so you can get pretty close. Leg is kind of back and up like that, it seems to me, and the other one is almost not. It seems he's just out of the frame at the bottom there. That is getting pretty close to where he is in the image. Those seem to be in about the right place, and the wings are just a little bit out of the side. And now we need to figure out how we're going to photo this without my hand in the frame. And I've just noticed that the very edge of his leg and this leg is out of frame. So what I could do, if they will allow, is hold him like that, and we are going to get pretty close. It's wobbling, but as you can see, I'm taking a video at the minute, and what we'll do is we'll go into Adobe Premiere and we'll get a still frame out of that rather than trying to get a picture, because it's very hard to get a still picture when he's suspended like that. One thing to think about is the lighting in the image. The light is coming from this direction and the shadow is falling this way. However, I already know that all of the detail here is going to be in shadow. So I don't think we can afford to do that. We've got to have the light at the front, but I might just adjust it so it lights his face a bit better here. And the reason that I'm doing it against the white background is we're going to pick him out of the image and then drop him into the frame. So we want a kind of a white background so that it's clear where the edges of the model are against the white background. I think that might be a nice compromise between the light coming up from the top left and it lighting up his underside. Unfortunately, Grimlock's head doesn't move up, so we can't angle his head forward, but we'll do that in Photoshop. So if we just get an image of him, his head clearly. We are really lucky here in that his left leg is right behind Grimlock's back, so we can fudge this one as well. If I let go, oh no, that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes the camera adjusts better without the strong light on it to close-ups, so I think that might be better for the face. Slug and Grimlock look like they're almost holding hands. Slug's head is forward like that, and his legs are quite straight at the back. They're not doing anything too complicated, but he is one where we don't have much room to maneuver here in terms of where I put my hands. It's a bit further up like that, so his head's a little bit more visible. Okay, so here I am in Premiere and I've already started editing this very video because it seems to be a good idea to kill two birds with one stone. But just to reiterate, you don't need to do this step if you're taking those still images, but I like to film the toys and then scrub through the footage to find the still that I want. So if we move to where we had Grimlock in position, I think it was the second attempt that I made where I moved him down a little bit. It was kind of around here. We'll just get rid of those two, get rid of the image of the movie there, and it's kind of like that really, any of these images. The good thing about smartphones these days, that even when things are wobbling, because I'm holding him by his foot there, it is still pretty clear on screen. Can make it a little bit bigger just to check that it's not a blurred image, but I mean the focal length I think is blurring the fists at the edge a little bit here, but the main body is in focus, so his fist is slightly off at certain points. So we just need to make sure everything is in picture. I think that is pretty much it. Let's grab that and then export frame, and let's call that Grimlock. And then OK. Then we just need to find the others, do the same for the others. I did notice that I'm going to put this head, transplant this head onto Grimlock's body, but in the image, let me just turn it back on, I noticed that it's angled up a little bit afterwards, so I took some extra views here that I think that sort of perspective will be a little bit better. So again, export the image, let's call that Grimlock head. And then we just need to do that with the other two guys. That's it. I think it was a little bit further down like that. So kind of there, where my hand is further down the leg. That will give us more options. So that's Sludge. Grab his head, that kind of position. Sludge head. And then Slug, one thing that I did notice, that he is kind of angled to the left a little bit. He kind of tilted left, but I don't think I need to reshoot it. We can do that in Photoshop. So we just need a shot of him where more of his chest is visible, as much of his chest as possible. I think that's about the best we're going to get. And then we can just turn him a little bit to the left in Photoshop. Slug. Is he Slug or Slag? He's Slug. Even as a kid, I felt like, because I'm from the UK, the Slag was an unfortunate name for this guy. I remember us sniggering on the playground. Slug head. Alright, so we've got all the still images outside of Premiere now. Obviously, I don't want to go too granular with this, but wherever your images export to, I keep it as the default for Premiere. The amount of updates with Premiere, if you start swapping around where things go, every time it updates, the chances are it will change where your things are stored. So I just tend to keep it as the default, which is in Documents, Adobe Premiere, whatever version you're using, 22.0 for me. So like I say, there are lots of options other than Photoshop, but I'm so familiar with it now, this is the program that I use. All right, and bring in all those images that we just created. So open, and this should work. We can do it all at once. If we just control click all of these, they should all open up in Photoshop one after another. There they all are. And sometimes it's a locked background, so we have to unlock it, and then we can drag that into the project that we're working on at the minute. Just get everything into the project, into one project folder. Yeah, it's so versatile, Photoshop, but it takes a while to get used to. I've been using it for about like 10 years at this point, but it's something that I never felt like I was able to do. And then I decided one day, you know what, it's going to be really handy if I can do all this stuff. Let's set some time aside to just learn it. So I followed some tutorials, but really a lot of stuff is just like, you have your project that you're working on, and then just think, what do I need to do here? And then just hunt the solution out online and learn bit by bit. I like to learn by doing. So it always helps if you've got a project that you're working on. So we can close all these now, just for the sake of sanity, because too many files open gets confusing, and also it can occasionally crash if you've got too much stuff going on in the background, so I like to keep things neat. The exact position of things doesn't really matter at this point, so I'm just double clicking on each of these and giving them names, each of the layers. So slug head, they don't preserve the name that they have outside the program. And then basically we need to take each of these images, let's turn everything off, so that's a transparent background, and then the first one we want to work on is Grimlock, and we just need to get him out of that background, so it's just the toy with that transparent background. There are lots of different options. You can use these marquee tools and things to create areas that you copy like that. But obviously we need to go very finely around the edges of this thing. There are shortcut tools like the magic wand tool. If this was all very flat background, we could click with this magic wand tool in the flat area. Oh, that's wrong. On the correct layer, and it tries to follow along with the division between objects, but as you can see, because there's lots of gradients of color here, it doesn't know exactly what it's doing, so we're going to have to do it by hand, and it's a little bit painstaking. So your options are to use these lasso tools and things, which allow you to get very fine control over where things are going to go. You can go around the edges of them and start creating cutouts and stuff. Polygonal lasso tool, I think, might be the thing where you can do that. So you can basically select specific points and we can start going around the image. And then once it's all filled in, we'll copy and paste Grimlock and he'll be separated from the background. I like to use the pen tool. It's the thing that I'm most familiar with, and once you get it's a complicated tool, but once you get used to it, you can create curves and all kinds of detail. And then if we go here, connect that image up, then right click and make selection, we can feather the radius around the object that we're picking out of the background, and then click OK, and you'll see that we can go control paste. You can see we can get all kinds of weird shapes and cut everything out of the background and really control it with the pen tool. So that is what I'm going to do, and it's a little bit painstaking. We start the process here, and you can zoom in as close as you need to get. It helps if you have a mouse where you can toggle the sensitivity, and really it's just a case of going around the whole object. And as you can see, if there are curves, you can get really fine with this. Ooh, and make sure that you're getting everything really close around the edges, but generally you don't need to do that. As you can see, this is way out here. We can still go in and adjust that later by clicking on. There are all sorts of shortcuts for these things. Whoops. Direct selection tool, so bring that down a little bit, get everything in shape, and then continue on all around the edge of Grimlock. Yeah, and you don't have to go that fine with it really. For most things, you don't have to do the curves, but you do have the option with the pen tool. That's why I like to use it. So I'm going to go around this whole model and then pull him out of the background, and I'll show you after it's done. So yeah, as you can see, pretty painstaking. We're nearly done now. I mean, it's almost pretty zen doing this kind of thing. I put some music on in the background, and basically it's tracing, right? It's like you just like being a kid again, and you just trace around things. But the good thing with this is, as you can see, I'm not doing the curves very much, and you don't have to be too precise because we are going to feather the edge. Like a 1 pixel feather just is really forgiving and means it doesn't look quite as harsh. The angles on the cutout and stuff. I'm just going to move that'll be fine. So there we are, he's ready to go. Right click, make selection, 1 pixel feather, anti-alias, yes, click OK. Then we copy, Control C, and then Control V to paste. And you can see he's cut out from the image, and it doesn't look too harsh at all. That feather just makes it look cool. And then when you've plopped him in the image, which we can do now, let's start this process. You can see that he's going to be smaller anyway, so it's almost like you know, you're not going to be looking that close on the thumbnail, and thumbnails a lot of the time these days are on mobiles. So you want to make it precise as possible, but it doesn't have to be 100%. So basically, we're not going to get it exactly the same, but I feel like if we angle him slightly to there, and he needs to be a bit bigger, but obviously the perspective is going to be slightly different. But roughly, he's kind of in the same place. You see what I mean? We're going to go in and change the arms so that they go up at the side here. And obviously we're going to remove Grimlock from the actual cartoon Grimlock from the background once we've got this all in place. But as you can see, there are little bits here that I need to cut out in the middle where the background is showing through, and I need to do Slug and Sludge as well. So I'm going to do that and speed up the footage until we are done. Yeah, so there's always stuff you're going to get wrong. Like here, I've cut off the horns from Slug, so we need to go back into Premiere and find a shot of him where his horns are in view. I'll just bring this up here so we've got as much of this footage to play around with as possible. I'm just trying to get more of the chest, as much of the chest as possible while the horns are still in place. I think that is about the best we're going to get. All right, so we've got everyone ready to go pretty much. Let's get them in order. So Sludge, the layer system in Photoshop is really cool. So if something is behind an image, then you put it on the layer underneath and so on. So background back in. So if we, so we're going to have to scale Sludge down to where he needs to be, roughly about there, and then twist him that way. Well, all looks very confusing at the minute. I promise we're going to be cleaning this up. It will look cool at some point, but at this point it just looks like a mess of different things. And you can scale down and scale back up. You won't lose resolution unless you rasterize things, which is kind of locks the image in place. I don't use rasterization very much personally. So certain things we're going to have to fudge. I think we're going to do some scaling on Grimlock's arm, but at the minute, as you can see, he's pretty much obscuring Slug completely. But I'm going to do some cleaning up here and create like a backup. So backup folder for everything that we're not going to be using at this point. So the original Grimlock image and stuff, we're going to put everything into this backup folder. So if something goes horribly wrong, we can always go back to these. Use masks and things to edit individual images and so forth, but I find that just bunging everything in a folder works for me. Okay, so the first thing we need to figure out is the angle of Grimlock's head. So let's bring in this head that I've cut out here and drag it into place. That's much better. He's looking forward, sort of at the camera, down at the ground really. But as you can see, the head is a different color when you take photos of things in different places, different lighting. So actually it doesn't look black anymore. There are lots of different options for making an image darker. There's color balancing, there's hue, saturation, all kinds of stuff. If we bring the lightness down, we could make it dark, but it starts to lose detail. It's basically until it's a silhouette. So we don't really want that. One of the things I like to do is to color match things. This is an option where you take the one layer and then color match it to another layer. So we'll try and match the head to Grimlock's body, the hue of the body. So it's in images, adjustments, match color. Then you choose the PSD you're working on, the Photoshop file, and then find the layer that you want to color match. So Grimlock head 2 is what we want to match to Grimlock body. But as you can see, it takes into account all the gold and all the various hues from the whole image. So that's not exactly what we want. To get around that, the best thing I've found to do is to isolate the part of the image that you want to color match. So I'll just trace around his head and we'll try and turn the other head the same color as this one. Shouldn't take too long. It just has to be a rough outline of this head. We'll just call it something like temporary head. Grimlock temp head. So match. Then we have a layer here called Grimlock temp head. And now when we try and color match this, it should work. Touch wood. It's something I've done before and something I just sort of taught myself. So I think that's a lot better. The only thing is we've lost definition in the eyes. So I'm going to click accept on that. And then I made, earlier, I made a backup of Grimlock's head. So we'll just go in here and pull out the eyes, the visor. So probably should have done this before I rescaled things, but it's not too bad. Because I think we're going to do some effects to this anyway and make his eyes glow. So that will be cool. So it gets complicated, the number of things that you've got going on here. So Grimlock visor, I've already created a special Grimlock folder. So Grimlock head 2 backup, let's go back down there, get rid of it. And temp head we don't need, that was just a color match. And then the visor is there, whoops. And let's scale it down to him. And then his eyes are kind of standing out again. That's a lot better. So we'll just scale them. His head's a little bit too big, as is. I think that's pretty good for the time being. All right. And then the fun bit, moving these arms around. Let's go back to the main Grimlock body and we need to isolate these again. More tracing. All right, so we've got that isolated. Let's copy and paste. So we've got Grimlock arm, right? And then we can move that wherever we want to move it. and we have to go in and get rid of the one from behind. He's going to be a Frankenstein's monster at some point. This is really easy though, because all we have to do is just click here, 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 then go all the way around the arm, the pen tool, and then just, we can feather the selection anyway, whatever, and then delete. Oh, I missed it there. Foolish boy. Quickest way to solve that, we can add another point to the pen tool there and just drag it out of position. We have to use the direct selection tool in order to do it, but there you go. So that will work now. There you go. Goodbye arm. And then bring the other one in place. Deselect. And in order to make sure that that doesn't clip over the body like that, we're going to move it behind, and then we can start angling this arm around in that direction so that it goes up and to the right like that, as it is a little bit more in the image. So I bring the image back in. It's even further up there. We've got to find a compromise between the original image and what the toy is going to be doing here. So like that, but then too much of the toy goes into the body of, so I think actually what we might do is make the arm a little smaller like that. Now, will it look really weird if he has tiny arms? We'll see. It might actually work because of the perspective. I'll try and do it with the other arm and we'll see what he looks like in isolation. Let me take this away. It might work if we make his arms smaller, you know, because in the original image, perspective is a thing. So his legs are going away into the background and his body is bigger. So we might have to kind of force that by making certain limbs a different size. And I think it's going to work if we make it about that size. So let me do the same with the other arm and I'll get back to you. And as you can see with this one, it's slightly different in that we can do the cutout okay, but it actually clips across the model quite a bit. So when we get rid of this arm, I want as much of the leg and the wing in place as possible. So I'm going to be a bit more careful with what I remove here. Okay, so as you can see, Grimlock now has a detachable arm. It's kind of fun pulling these guys to pieces, and in Photoshop you can do all kinds of things like make them into puppets for animation using this process. That is his left arm. Let's bring the background image in and try and line him up with it. All the different elements of Grimlock selected, sort of there, and then bring the arm up in that direction. So even though we've cut out part of the leg there, once this is in place, I don't think it will matter too much and we can add in a bit of extra detail. I think we're going to have to, I mean, obviously that arm is bigger because of the perspective of what is going on there, and I don't want to make it too small too soon. But if we go like this, so all I'm doing is pressing control and finding a particular handle on the edge and then dragging it apart, you can create perspective. It's not like true 3D or anything like that, but I think we're going to have to do something like that in order for it to look okay. One thing I've just noticed is that this arm is clipping behind the wing, so we need to make a separate layer for this wing, which is not complicated, just involves more tracing, as you might imagine. I think the main thing with Photoshop is getting your head around the layers, and once you've figured out like the order of the various layers and stuff, there's all kinds of interesting things you can do. So if we just copy that and then call that Grimlock wing, and then put that behind his arm, then get rid of it. So I don't want to remove too much that I don't need to remove. Just want to remove as much as is needed to reveal the arm behind. Oh, don't want to take that out. Took the edge off there. I should really be changing the brush size and the dimensions of everything here, but all right, so the wing is now behind the arm technically. Another thing I'm not happy about are these guys. They are too much in front of Sludge's face, so I want to bring his arms down behind his wings a little bit. So let's make these into separate layers as well, and then we can manipulate them. We'll get rid of that one. Bing, gone. Just bring the new guy into place. So that one should be there, but then we can put that behind Grimlock's body and bring it down like that, so that we still see the claw, but it's out of Sludge's face. And then to get things lining up, we'll do the same thing on this side and just bring it down a little bit. Okay, so both claws are a little bit further out of the way now. We're starting to be able to see the characters in the background, like Slug is no longer obscured by his arm. Okay, so I think we're at the stage where we need to start removing the characters from the background. The reason I haven't done that at the start is that obviously the toys are covering most of them, and if we don't have to intricately go in and remove every aspect of Grimlock and can just get away with removing part of the edges, I think that's a much better option. Basically, it's a combination of painting and this amazing tool called the healing brush in Photoshop. So let me just click on the background here and make it a lot bigger so you can see. The healing brush, if you click on a certain part of the image, so let's go there, it will duplicate it in other parts of the image. So by doing, obviously that's no good, we don't want Slug over there. So you need to be specific about where you're clicking on, what parts of the image you're using to cover things up. If we were to do the edge here with this size selection area, we could come down here and start to remove bits of Grimlock, and he just looks like he's blurring into the mountain there. But we can do that around all the edges, so it's best to show you and not to tell. And the stuff that we can't do with the healing brush, we will just fill in with paintwork basically, and just copy there, and we can start to draw in texture. I'll speed up the video and we'll see how we get on. And when we use the paintbrush, if you get you put too much flat color in there, and it can start to look artificial and not match up with the original. So we want a little bit of texture and darkness against certain points so that it keeps matching in with the original illustration. It would be really handy if his leg wasn't if his leg was more out to the side. I might have to grab an image of his leg in that position so we can plop it in. Okay, so that's a little bit more dynamic, and it means we've got less stuff to get rid of in the background. I don't think that actually looks too bad. What I was worried about was matching the leg to the photography that we've already taken, but actually that's not too bad at all. When it comes to bits like this where we need to create an edge of a mountain, I think it might be useful here to use the healing brush and make it a bit bigger. Let's get the edge of that mountain, and then we can kind of plop it in behind his leg like that. It kind of looks like it should have been there all along, except it's bleeding into picking up color from elsewhere. I don't know why it's doing that. Why the hell? I think because the red is already there. Maybe what we need to do is cover everything up, and then the red won't bleed through quite as much. Yeah, I don't think that looks too bad. It looks like the edge of the mountain down at the bottom, like we haven't obscured too much stuff. Let's just put some more detail back in here. And we did have some trees down here, So I think I'll try and grab some trees with the healing brush. It's kind of a little bit too dark there. All right, so it's starting to look okay, I feel like. The thing is, it's really hard to create this grainy effect. I think we could posterize things and mess around with various brushes to try and get this less of a smooth gradient here and recreate the old animation cell effect, whatever they were using here. It's more like posterized paint. All right, let's do the heads of Sludge and Slug. Yeah, so to break up this area, I think this looks a lot better now. I put in some clouds from up here, so just grabbing these and adding them into that bottom bit. Just the pen tool again, but this time we'll feather the radius by 20 and then copy and paste the background. And you just have this little bit of cloud that you can put anywhere and add a little bit of that original cell animation in there. You can also see here I've just moved this claw to fudge this area here that doesn't look so great. A couple of things have occurred to me as I'm going, so I'm going to make some final copies of all of these guys, merge some layers, and then we can mess around with the whole layer. So merge those layers. All right, so there's nothing in the background there apart from those final images all locked together. Grimlock is all in one. That thumb down at the bottom there. Now the question is, should we try and make it a little bit more like cell shaded animation and the original, and put a stroke in there to kind of make it look more like animation. The thing is, it kind of pops out of the background a little bit and the black doesn't follow into the rest of the model. So I think it might make it pop out of the background too much. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I think I am going to put a little bit of a drop shadow in there. That's very subtle. I don't like it to be over the top at all, but it does help characters just pop out of the background a little bit. But again, it might not be something we really want. Copy layer style, let's just paste it on everyone. It's almost imperceptible, but it does make them pop a little bit more. And should we add film grain? This is one thing that I'm always in two minds about. Do we want to make it like the original cartoon? So I'll show you what I mean. Filter, distort. Is it noise? It's add noise, stylize video. Yeah, they stopped. I think they maybe stopped calling it film grain at some point, but basically we do the same thing by adding noise like that. And you see it makes Grimlock a little bit more like really crazy like that. We could add a little bit of film grain in there. Not sure about that. And other stuff that we can do finally. I like this particular filter, camera raw filter. And you can go in and really make the original image a little bit more vibrant and colorful. Clarity makes it darker, and dehaze is very useful if you're taking pictures of any kind of reflective surfaces. You can get rid of haze and reflections a little bit, but texture is one I use because it just sharpens the image up a little bit. If you look there, you see how blurry that is. I'm not sure if you can really see there if I make it super big. You should be able to see that it's quite blurry, particularly around the edges. And then you bring it to here and it's a lot sharper. I really like it. Let's not go crazy. Let's just do 50, and then vibrance. And I think it's saturation on the Dinobots for the gold. It just makes the gold pop out, and I really like that. Just look at Grimlock. He's just a little bit duller, you know. It's subtle, but it pops more, you know. And same thing with Sludge up there. I think it does make a difference, and it's worth doing. Now these guys are so contrasty and vibrant in the image. The original background looks a little bit dark. We don't want to go too high. Let's add, say, 30 to the image. a little bit of contrast, like 15 maybe. And then bring it up a little bit with the brightness, because contrast always darkens the image a little bit. I feel like this is pretty close to being ready now. One thing I would like to do though is mess around with the lighting effects a little bit, just on the eyes. It's something that I've been trying to do in various ways. I tried to do Hot Rod's glowing visor, but I feel like I've never quite got it right, so I just want to play around a little bit. Maybe not putting a really obvious glow, but having Grimlock's eyes stand out a little bit more. So I've moved the visor up to the top there, and I think possibly what we could do is put like a glow around the edge. So if we make it blue, a little bit brighter, and then just play around with this a little bit. It's really hard to get an effect that doesn't look silly. Like that is too much, but that kind of just lights the edge of his eyes. And if that's around the visor, and then if we go in a little bit closer on the visor layer and do a little bit of kind of a brighter bit in the middle, and then do some more feathering. What we could do is perhaps just lighten up the eyes in the middle. This is really just me messing around now, but let's do like a 3. Yeah, things are so close here that it may not be really possible, but let's go further around the edge, right up to the edge of the visor, and then do the kind of the feather and see if we can just get the middle to be a little bit brighter. Maybe we have to do 2, feather the radius of 2, then copy and paste. So we've got Grimlock visor 2. And then we can mess around with lighting here, adjustments, brightness. We can bring the brightness of his eyes in the middle up there a little bit. If we go out here, so that's the kind of yeah, I'm really not sure about the glow around the eyes. Maybe it's too much. Anyway, we'll bring up the middle so that his eyes are glowing more. I like that. Yeah, but I think we need to get rid of the actual outer glow, or if there is going to be an outer glow, it needs to be less obvious. Maybe that is better. The normal blend mode makes a big difference. That linear dodge makes things very bright. So if we just go there and then just a little subtle effect blowing up the edge of his eyes. But the thing is, it can make it just look dirty. Less, I think maybe that is better. Just keep it bright. It's a shame. I would really like to get the glow working on these eyes. How can I do it? Really, we're just ending up brightening these. There we go. I like that a bit better. That's a little bit more subtle. Same on the other side. And then we're just gonna try and put some eyes into Sludge because he doesn't really have any. It's so subtle on the model. So I'm not even sure we're going to be able to do this properly. But when you're not creating a path that you want to trace out, we can create a shape. We've got the fill. Let's turn the stroke off and just create an eye here. So there, and then bring the eye to about there. What do you think? I don't think we're going to get it any better than that. It's very far in the background there. So, I mean, there's all sorts of fun things we can keep messing around. Like, I really like the blur filter. If we add motion blur to the character, so we can put the angle at which the motion blur is and the extent of the motion blur. I mean, as if he's really just being caught on camera as he speeds past. But we should probably keep it simple.
All right, so the question is, what do we do with Swoop in the background? Do we take him out or do we leave him there? Hopefully
they'll bring out a version in the Studio Series 86 of that character. But let me know in the comments what I should do with him. Also, if you clicked on the video because of the thumbnail, let me know that. There's no guarantee that if you put all this time into a thumbnail, it works and people are intrigued. So let me know that as well. I did a versus with these 3 characters, the toys from the Studio Series 86, seeing which one comes out on top. So if you're interested in that, click on the video that I'll link now. Other than that, I've been Napier. I hope the video was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.